haere mai, and welcome to Cult Chat, the podcast where we talk about coercion, control, and all things cultish. I'm Dr Caroline Ansley. I'm a medical doctor. As a child, I lived at the Centrepoint community, a notorious cult in New Zealand, and now I run a website that advocates for the former children of the community.
I'm Liz Gregory, and I run the Glory of Our Leavers Support Trust, and I'm privileged to walk alongside people after leaving this group as they embark on their new lives.
And I'm Lindy Jacob. I'm a former member of the Exclusive Brethren, and I'm part of the Olive Leaf Network, a new initiative in Aotearoa to support leavers of high-demand religious groups.
Come with us as we unpack the cult playbook. We'll be talking to experts and leavers of coercively controlling groups, and we will call for Kiwis to cult-proof their lives.
Come with us as we traverse the cultiverse.
A warning, this podcast contains references to subjects and discussions which may be difficult for some people to hear. Please take care of yourselves and your whānau when listening.
Kaz here with my friend Anka Richter, who's the author of the fantastic book Cult Trip. She's bringing us an exciting event soon.
Oh, kia ora. Get ready for DCULT, the first cult awareness conference in Aotearoa, New Zealand, happening in Christchurch this October.
Well, that sounds great. Who's it for, Anka?
Look, it's for anyone concerned about coercive control and trauma, but we're especially inviting health professionals, social workers, therapists, teachers, police, lawyers, pastors and chaplains to upskill in cult education. These are the professional people who can make the biggest difference for cult survivors.
Wonderful. I've been inviting all my medical friends to come along. There's going to be lots of content at DCULT, which will be really interesting for them.
Head to our website, decult.net, for all the info.
See you at DCULT 2024. Howdy, welcome back to Cult Chat. I'm sitting in a recording studio at Plains FM with my two girls, Lindy and Liz, and we're very excited to be here where we're going to be talking about a topic that people keep on coming up and asking me these days. Is my group a cult? And it's a hard question to answer, so often I respond to them by saying, well, maybe it's more useful to think of it whether it's healthy or not. And so it leads me on to the whole idea of how do we evaluate the health of any group that we're in. And I think personally this is a critical issue for all New Zealanders to think about. Is whatever group they're in a healthy one?
Yeah. Whether it's CrossFit or the choir or a church, these groups exist on a spectrum of healthy to harmful, and what are the kind of flags along that way? What's a green flag and what's a red flag? So today we're talking about what are the green flags.
Yes, great. A positive discussion, actually, although obviously there have been some unhealthy groups out there getting a lot of sort of attention. We can think of the obvious ones, but then what are some of the other ones that you've been hearing
Well,
from?
I have been hearing more about different groups, and one that I heard about last week or a couple of weeks ago, someone mentioned that they'd been involved in a group in the Banks Peninsula that I had not heard before, and they thought it had some very culty aspects to it, and that was a group called originally the Seven Ray Foundation. They changed their name then to the Christ's College of Trans-Himalayan Wisdom, and then later on they moved on to calling themselves the Southern Light Centre.
Oh, that's just the language. Lights, frequencies, mystic.
Trans-Himalayan, wow.
Changing the name over time.
Yeah, it's interesting because in New Zealand, I think a lot of general society still kind of thinks, we don't have cults really in our midst, right? Everyone knows the glory of our thing, but people, I think, still often go, what else is there? But actually, there are groups in our backyards, in our cities, on the outskirts of our cities, in our towns, and they're just often not, even in the day and the age of internet, often fly quite under the radar.
Yeah, have you heard any new groups that have been mentioned to you lately, Lindy?
Well, yes. Actually, the journalist Steve Kilgallen, he's got an interest in this sort of thing, and he's written a couple of articles over the last few years as he stumbled across various groups. I think he wrote an article about one, I think, called Evolved, that was sort of a self-help type of one, and then, I've forgotten the name of the other one, but there was another one No, it's flown out of my head, but if you Google him, he's got some articles on some of these groups in New Zealand.
What was his name again?
Steve Kilgallen, Kiwi journalist.
I think he was on staff. And News Hub, Michael Mora has been following the Sons of the Most Holy Redeemer. And I know Michael Hempsey was involved. It's a Catholic order, and Michael
That's
Hempsey,
very culty.
he has deep concerns about it, and we've had conversations, and so that is one's ringing.
There's of course Shincheon G,
University campuses.
I think that's becoming a bit more well known.
Yeah,
We've certainly covered
allegedly a
them.
cult, and then there are sort of things, there's the sort of ones with Christian base like Shincheon G, and some people say that Jehovah's Witnesses are a cult and so on, but then there's also, I think, some quite concerning sort of gurus or alternative spirituality groups or alternative sexuality groups. There's, for me, the jury's out with a group like ISTA, International School of Temple Arts. They're a group that promotes exploring alternative sexuality and sexual practices.
There's been a lot of concern in New Zealand around the link with Haydn Temple and the link to ISTA. So that's definitely one worth watching. There are some great concerns there.
Yeah. And I guess, one key thing probably to remind the listener is that all of these groups have got really good things about them. And they've got really good ideals that they're promoting and positive things. And so, as we've said probably 1,000 times on this show, none of them, are walking around going, we're a cult, come and join us.
We're going to destroy your life. You're going to be miserable.
They don't advertise that. And so when you're looking at a group, when you're joining a group or a spirituality, you're researching, a religion or some kind of a practice that you're thinking about joining, and you're looking at the benefit it's going to bring your life, just, do your best to take caution, do your research, talk to former members as well as current members. Remember that current members will have an agenda to promote the group, and so it can be wise to talk to former members as well.
But what about those smaller groups that never have an internet presence? You can't find any people who've been in them, and on the surface they look great.
Except you talk to
a lot of cult of 10.
You talk to a lot of people who join those groups. They had doubts and questions very early on, and they suppressed them. And I think there's something to have intuition and to follow. There is something about that. But obviously we can't trust our guts all the time, clearly.
Because our guts are often telling us about racial stereotypes and
all
ideas
sorts of
that we've had and put into us that need to be examined.
So that's why they need to listen to Cult Chat today, because we're going to look at the indicators of a healthy community.
Yes, because we should have that all listed in our heads and something that we know and understand well.
And in our favourite book. Now, this is the book Escaping Utopia by Janja Lalich. It's not the same as the documentary on Gloriavale and Gloriavale Leavers called Escaping Utopia. Both, though, are worth your time investing in. Can you tell us about Janja Lalich and her framework for understanding community groups?
Yes, so Janja Lalich was a professor, now she's retired, who we've spoken about many times, and she does some fantastic research on cults. She spent about 30 years researching cults and still very active. And
ex-cultist herself.
Ex-cultist herself, yes. And she, I think it was her PhD research where she developed the bounded choice model of cults. And she talked about these 4 different aspects that she believes need to be present in a cult. But actually, when you look deeper, you discover that the 4 aspects actually can be present in good groups, but they're just used in a different way. So that the 4 aspects are the transcendent belief system, the charismatic...
That's the belief that there is something outside of yourself, and this group is promoting that. It's an ideology.
It may or may not be a divine being, right? It can just also be belief in a higher purpose.
Yes. I guess so, that transcends the normal human experience and is above and beyond that, and can give you a sense of rightness and a sense that your actions and your purposes are
more than yourself.
Much more than yourself.
So
that helps to answer some of the meanings of life.
Can be a multi-marketing, but it's always that this has a solution. A simple solution to the world's complex problems, perhaps.
Yes, but they're not transcendent belief systems aren't always abused.
No.
Yes, and that's what we're trying to say. And then there's the charismatic authority, and we've all struck charismatic authorities, or we know about them historically, people who have this power to keep you excited and keep you feeling almost an in love feeling with them, who manage to get people to do things that they maybe wouldn't have done. Not necessarily bad things.
That's
they
right.
could be amazing things. They could be helping you to step out into the world and make a change in the world that you never would have done without their encouragement and movement. So charismatic authorities can change the world. You know, people like Desmond Tutu, people like
Donald Trump.
He's a charismatic authority.
he's
Definitely.
absolutely a charismatic authority.
Let's check it against the list.
I was trying to think of some good ones. Martin Luther King, Kate Shepherd, Idi Amin. Not a good one. So then there's charismatic authority. Then we've got systems of control. Systems of control are used to help a group kind of function, really. You need to have a system of control. You need things, for instance, in a workplace, you need to have the time you arrive, the time you leave, the work that you do during your working day.
You should wear a seatbelt, drive on the side of the road.
Yeah, you need to hand in your work on time, you need to whatever. So we need systems of control to organise ourselves, but systems of control in cults are used to control and dominate people, and abuse people. And then there's systems of influence. This one's a little bit harder to understand, but we all experience influence in our lives. And in a good working environment, they can powerfully change a person to feel connected and move along with the team in the direction the team's wanting to go. They can help you feel like you belong, you're connected, you want to be part of this team because of positive peer pressure and encouragement. And in a negative environment, systems of influence are used to shut down dissent, to make people not think, like for instance, a public humiliation, reminding people that you never do this, don't ever do this because this harmful, don't break the rules because you too will be treated in this humiliating public punishment kind of way.
The use of guilt, manipulation, deceit, all those
So it's using the social structures around us to make us conform rather than help us to grow and be more healthy versions of ourselves. So that's Janja Lalich's model, and we're going to use it using some of the work.
What's the name of it? Does it have a title?
The Bounded Choice Framework.
It's called the Bounded Choice Framework. Okay, how does that title directly correlate to those four things?
I haven't yet read her Bounded Choice book.
But it's in this Escaping Utopia. So the bounded choice, when she's mentioning those frameworks, she is looking at them through the lens of unhealthy cultic groups. And so bounded choice, that concept
it's a restricted choice, right? Limited option choice.
When you have groups that use those four techniques against you,
then you have bounded choices.
Bounded choices.
Right, I see.
They're bound and restricted. They're not free choices. That's not the free will concept.
Yeah, okay.
Group.
So that's interesting to me because I think it says that the concept of choice is at the heart of each of these things. So maybe that's a key thing for the listener to hold in our minds when you think about groups, and as we go on to discuss now is, how does this thing in this group impact my ability to choose and have choices?
Of course, that's problematic because once you're in a group and you're fully indoctrinated, you start to actually internalise the doctrine and believe that you've chosen it.
Yes.
Absolutely. Second, third generation.
Yeah.
Yes, and you don't actually
you believe that you've chosen
you don't
first
need, you
to
don't,
do this.
You don't even need the system of influence anymore because the influence is within you.
Yeah.
Tricky.
You swear black and blue that you chose Gloriavale as a second generation of being born there.
So let's, shall we start looking at the healthy transcendent belief system?
That's a good idea.
Yeah, okay. So that's where we started. So the transcendent belief system that makes you think that you've got a higher purpose, that what you're doing is maybe going to change the world, has answered some questions about why you're here on this planet. A lot of groups don't actually have a transcendent belief system.
No.
So
the choir I was in.
The book club I belong to. Yeah. So, but, often religious organisations or groups do. So, the only...
And arguably political groups as well.
Yes, they would.
Definitely.
Yeah, or even something like some environmental groups could.
Ideology?
I'm like a big fan of those, but it's, I guess, any group that is, governed by an ideology, right, that helps connect you to concepts of bigger picture, bigger purpose. So it may or may not be connected to a deity.
Definitely.
Like you might think, if there's no obvious God or no obvious worship rituals, then it's not a transcendent belief system. But actually, transcendent belief systems can be in other ideological groups.
And actually it gives you, it kind of enables that whole what's it when you can do something for the better?
Sacrificing something for the bigger picture. It brings in that whole thing, because it's okay to break a few break a few eggs to make an omelette type of thing. Like, it's okay maybe here to lie in this instant, or because it's for this greater purpose.
Justifies the means.
End justifies the means. That's the one. But,
and that still exists in a group that is healthy, but it's just not necessarily unethical or unmoral. We're doing this for
I guess
the
what we're
greater
saying is it brings an element of power, and so to be cautious around that power, and to be, are you free to question that power?
That's the biggie. So the biggie is this a group that encourages critical thinking, debate and individuality? So they would be your big broad strokes of a healthy group. But when you talk about individuality, what if the group you're involved in requires you to wear a uniform? Does that make it culty? Does that make it unhealthy? No. And so that's why a lot of elements need to be at play before we can...
Right, so we're going back to before on the show we've talked about how do you identify coercive control, and with that a key word legally is a pattern. Is there a pattern of X, Y, Z? So here we're asking questions of, is there a pattern? But so in a healthy group with a healthy transcendent belief system, you can question, you can doubt that transcendent belief system. You can ask questions about it, you can think your own thoughts about it, and you may or may not believe exactly as is kind of written in the code of conduct or the doctrinal thing.
But you're still welcome. You can still be part of the conversation, and debate it without there being an extraordinary threat received, because you're saying, hey, I see this a little bit differently. What about this? And you don't get shut down. Punished, cut off. In fact, the debate is welcome.
So would you say there's not strict inside or outside of boundaries in a healthy group?
Yeah, they would be less.
Yeah, you still need. A group is not a group unless it's got edges, right? You got to define your group. So having this is what we believe. That's the Gloria Vale doctrine. Having a concept of what you believe and what you adhere to creates cohesion in the group. It's just.
But it's how are you treated if you do choose to doubt or question that, or how are you treated if you leave?
And is the belief system flexible?
Are you dehumanised?
Yes. Is it flexible at all? Or is it entirely inflexible?
And involves subordination. So there's some of those other concepts. And it's so hard to talk about a healthy group without comparing it to an unhealthy group. Yeah. We're trying to do the flip of it. But it's a group where members are treated well. They're not expected to be subordinate or perfect. It allows for autonomy, personal autonomy, for dignity. These are beautiful words of freedom. You retain identity and finances. So there's some element of control around the individual
interests
person.
me that, here we've got copies of Janja's work in front of us, and here she specifically says, under a sign of a group with a healthy transcendent belief system, that members retain their identities, their finances, relationships, personal time, and private lives. That really interests me, because at the Olive Leaf Network we have what we call the high demand hand, when we are helping people to identify if their group is a high demand group or not. And in the high demand hand, it's got relationships, resources, your lifestyle, employment, and education. So all those 5 areas, they're just 5 categories really that encompass the whole life. And we say, is your group deeply impacting each of those 5 areas? Is there sort of no corner of your life that this group doesn't have a significant level of control over?
Invade.
So if is your group, your transcendent belief system, is it sort of trying to take over every aspect of your life?
And is that belief system entirely controlled by someone else that you have no influence over? Can you bring your creativity,
your individuality,
your
skills, talents,
your skills and talents,
and be welcomed,
and have the group kind of sort of move to fit you in, rather than
force you to conform.
You have to conform to be like this, or you're out of there.
And that's the biggie. You're out of there. There's the idea with a healthy group that once you leave it,
If you choose that
if you
this
choose
isn't
to
for
leave
you.
it, that's okay. You don't have to abandon your friends and your family and be shunned. Is it okay to leave this group? And I think that is a massive key. That's a trigger right there. Can you leave this group
without trauma?
Yeah.
What are the
Yeah.
consequences?
Yeah.
What's the
Yeah.
consequence? Are you afraid to leave?
Yeah.
When
At
you
the
lose
end-
everything?
At the end of her chapter, she says, when a transcendent belief system is healthy, people have choices.
Nice.
Yeah.
Oh, that's amazing.
So what's the next one,
And,
Kaz?
all right. Then we've got the charismatic authority.
Oh, yes.
And like this is that person that draws you in, that makes you feel in love with them almost.
Yeah.
And in an unhealthy group, that sense of being in love with the person or awe or worship of the person never goes away because they work very hard to sustain that feeling that they are somehow worshipful. Whereas in a healthy charismatic authority may certainly draw you in, but once you get to know them, you realise they've got flaws, and you know they just become someone who sort of excites and motivates you, and that you want to rally around, perhaps. But you know, like they are human.
That's right.
You know, and
So
they've got
don't-
ethical practices. They understand the power dynamic. They understand that they're a leader or a visionary, someone who can mobilise the energy of others.
Yeah.
But they've got structures and systems around them that they can be checked on.
They don't impose and cross other people's boundaries in a really unhealthy way.
Yeah.
That's interesting, the checks and balances one, because that as we know, power can corrupt people.
Yeah.
And so having good checks and balances. Yeah, I have heard of groups, churches and other ones where the leader had way too much power, and even if there was on paper, you know, a governance board or something that was supposed to keep that person in check, often in reality that guru or spiritual leader had still way too much power and influence, or was meeting with, you know, that governance board wasn't ever allowed to meet without the leader, or you know, just wrong things like that. So yeah,
Or all their children are filtering through, you know, all the people that they control are on the governance board and in positions
they've
of
got
authority and
puppets or
power.
yes people there.
Yeah.
So if you've got a charismatic leader, you need to find out what are the checks and balances around them. You know, if you need to make a complaint, what is the process? Does this group have a process, a healthy, robust process with integrity for making a complaint and getting something checked out and believed?
Is there accountability for that leader? Like,
Definitely.
does this person have someone above them or beside them that is able to actually pull them in aside and go, look, hey buddy, pull your head in. That wasn't okay. We need to address this area in your life. And accountability to me is absolutely critical. I have unfortunately in my time as a doctor worked with a number of charismatic or powerful figures, other doctors when I was at medical school who were the authority figures on the wards, or people I've worked with in practices who don't seem to have any checks and balances and of course, you know, medicine's one of those areas where there's a lot of power differential, and you know, there's a lot of kudos, you're getting a lot of social reward all the time, and people who are not responsive to the people around them to say, you know, that you need to check your behaviour, you need to, you know, here's a, you know, someone has said this about you, and is it right? Can you reconsider your, you know?
That comes to the important lever is, how do they treat other people?
Yes.
How do they treat you?
Absolutely.
Are they? Do they have humanity? Do they have a sense of humour? Can they laugh at themselves?
Yeah.
These are all, you know, how do they treat you? Are they treating you like a disciple, a servant, a pawn on a chess game? Is that?
Yeah, like are they, is there evidence that they're using people to get their own agenda done rather than having genuine care?
And of course, they would say it's not their own agenda. It's the agenda of this greater
vision.
transcendent belief system that they are promoting as well. And so it's easy.
So I'd be asking things like, what about the complaints procedure in this group? Is there a rigorous complaints procedure? So where if you have an experience with the the charismatic authority that doesn't fit with what they'd like you, you know, like for instance, if you had an inappropriate sexual harassment kind of experience with the group leader, what happens? You know, what can you take that somewhere? Do you feel safe? Do you feel listened to? Or do you feel like this leader is really well above any of these sort of criticisms.
Yeah. Janja says here, when the charisma of a person or a group is healthy, people are drawn to it and invigorated by it. When it's not, their choices get tangled up with the leader's need for total devotion and control.
Yeah, total devotion and control. Ouch. Yeah, because some of it is just almost what you can pick up interpersonally. Like, I agree, checking those wider things, that's really important. But sometimes it's things like, just watch them and see how do they respond if someone doesn't quite toe the line. Yeah, what stories do you hear? What are they like? Have you seen them angry, or have you seen them threatened, and how did they respond? And I mean, Liz, I've heard you use this expression before about hopeful Christian, but you said he's a master of optics. And sometimes these charismatic leaders there can be a front and a personality that they convey that is different to how they might operate behind the scenes.
Yes.
And so you do have to be very careful.
An outsider coming in is going to see the good. People who go and live in Gloriavale for a few weeks and even a few months, they are not going to see what was shown on the recent documentary
Some of the
series about
slippery
Gloriavale.
behaviour.
No, hopeful Christian, when he was alive, he wouldn't have blown his stack in front of a guest. You know, in fact, they had a flag system where if they had a Sunday Lord's Day meeting and there was a visitor there, someone was supposed to put a wee flag up so that he was alerted to the fact that there was a visitor, and he would adjust and do things differently.
Yes.
And so, you know, it can take time
to
for a
spot the
newbie to spot the real. That's why I think it's important to talk to people who have gone.
So I would be curious to know how this leader behaves when in conflicts and challenges. Like, how do they deal with a difference or
opinion.
a difference of opinion, or someone's not done what was expected, or things haven't gone the way they expected. How do they treat the individuals involved?
Are they kind or cruel? Because often these unhealthy group leaders expect a high demand. They demand perfection, a high level of it. So how are they gracious? Is there an ability to literally forgive and forget? Or are they bringing up and dredging up the past again to hold it over you?
And it's just I can't remember the group that I was investigating or reading, but I was thinking, I think I can remember, it's Mary Garden's book, where she's talking about the guru she follows. You know, I was thinking they have a sense of humility. They can look at their own wrongs. But then I was thinking in Mary Garden's book, she talks about the guru she was following, who was always criticising himself to his followers. And I was like, well, that would actually confuse you.
False humility.
It make you think that your leader is open to criticism and is open to being challenged. If he goes, you know, like he talks about the mistakes he's made, but if nothing changes, if he doesn't take feedback and admits to harm, kind of appears to be humble but does absolutely nothing with it, and there's no changes and people still are suffering, well then...
And that's different from just having a difference of opinion, because you can provide feedback to people till the cows come home and that person doesn't change their beliefs because they might listen to your feedback. Let's go personal. So I get feedback. People might not be happy with the fact I'm doing a podcast or going public or have a social media account for the Gloriavale Leavers Trust, whatever. You know, and they don't like the trajectory we're going down. They can come, submit their feedback. I can read it openly, not harbour any ill will towards them. Feel very pleased, actually, that they've been courageous enough to come and submit that feedback, but it doesn't mean I'm going to change my mind or my practice, because I don't actually inherently believe that the feedback they're giving me is valid. It might be valid. I can understand their perspective. I'm sympathetic to it. And so those people, after not seeing my behaviour change, might say, well, she doesn't listen to me. Well, no, I'm hearing, I'm listening, but I'm rejecting it. I've made a different choice, but I have a choice. I think in healthy groups you have a choice. The leader will give that choice.
Another interesting idea about this charismatic authority is they are open to other ideas, and they may actually talk about other ideas. They may, for instance, if it's, say, a church group, if it's your pastor we're talking about, they may actually collaborate with a local, totally different denomination church, or maybe even the mosque. You know, like we had quite a lot of collaboration in local churches around the mosque shooting here in Christchurch, and they were working with the mosque to kind of like support them. So if that charismatic authority is willing to kind of engage with groups who have, or people who have really
different worldviews,
clear and obvious different worldviews, then
they're not threatened by that.
right.
They're not necessarily promoting those ideas, though some they might, but they're able to be comfortable with difference, and they're not threatened by it. Yeah.
Interesting.
That probably leads into the signs of the healthy systems of control. And these are the elements what we're really getting into when you think about cults, because obviously you've got a transcendent belief system, and it might not be the beliefs inherently themselves that are dangerous, but put them in the hands of a wrongfully directed charismatic leader, but it's really around the systems of control and influence that you find sort of the noose tightening around people's necks.
So what are some of the systems of control? I mean, these are I have to say, I think systems of control are the ones that seem quite obvious to the outside world. You know, like things like you can't use contraception. And you have large families because you can't use contraception. You have to wear certain clothing.
Now, that's the bad side of it. So the positive side of a healthy community is that you have autonomy around decisions around child, creation of children.
Yeah, but I'm just talking about control systems. Yeah. What are those systems? So,
and systems of control, I mean, in a positive or a negative group, they're often unspoken. Sometimes they are spoken ways of how we do things around here, right? And
exactly.
and often those are totally fine. Like in your choir group, stand this way, wear black, whatever.
That's right.
So
yeah, how are you controlled in your choir group?
Yes, I was involved for years with the Sweet Adelines. I'm not currently, but that was we worked. We had rehearsals to attend.
You were controlled by having to turn up to
we
the
had
rehearsal.
We had to turn up. We made a commitment. There was a standard required in order to go through to the next level. So there was a competition coming up. You'd have voice recorders in front of you. You would hand those into the section leader who would listen and say, you've made an error here, here, here. You're going to need to reassess. So once you've passed that standard...
Who set the rules? Who set...
the rules would have been the lady who started it, and she's still there today. There is a leadership group under her, but it doesn't
probably
matter.
knew what those rules would be.
I knew what the rules would be. We knew there was a standard. We had to wear a uniform. There was a strict makeup standard.
I expect they made sense as well.
They made sense, yes, because we were going to be competing on international stages, and we had a standard and we were working together in a camaraderie, and you knew that if you let the team down, the whole
So what would
team
have
might
happened?
suffer.
What would have happened if, say, two people in the group decided they weren't following those rules?
Someone would have spoken to them and said, hey, look, we've noticed your attendance is down. Are things going on okay with your life? What's happening? I mean, I was out for weeks. I'd had some surgery. And so, the reality is there's flexibility there within groups.
But did you, as a member of the group, actually understand and respect the need and the importance of those rules? It's not like you were like, well, those two people, they can do what they want.
Definitely.
You actually kind of...
There was an equality there. Everyone was expected to stick to the same rules. And so...
And could you possibly question them if you needed? Like if you're like, why do we have to wear black? I want to ask this question. I want to suggest, can we please wear blue instead? Because it makes my eyes...
Yeah, I think there was the ability for people to say, hey, to contribute and participate and not be shut down for having an opinion.
That's key.
They might not have taken your ideas on board. Yeah. And so that's the thing. Groups that have rules and have standards are not just culty. Remember, you're looking at groups that have all the elements.
Do you think the Sweet Adelines would have worked without any system of control?
No, definitely not.
Why wouldn't it have worked?
No, because to have a choir that is in sync together on stage performing in an international competition, you can't just
get thrown together and just hope without any practice.
No, it needed commitment. It needed a loyalty to the group. It needed,
So one of the key things that Janja lists in a healthy group with healthy systems of control is that no person is above the rules. And I think that's a really interesting one, because if I'm just imagining in your choir, if a leader or a key person was suddenly like, oh, I'm actually going to wear a bright pink dress and everyone else is in black, and they were free to do that and they were not put in their place or questioned about that, the problem. But in an unhealthy group, nearly always the key leader or key special elite people, they have some flexibility with the rules. They can choose that actually, I am allowed to do this, or I am, allowed to go on holiday even though no one else is allowed to. Yeah, or there's
I'm thinking of Bert Potter at some point. Centrepoint community was everyone lived communally. They were watched. They could be watched because there was no boundaries in the sleeping arrangements, and they all lived together. At some point, Bert Potter removed himself with his wife to a building at the back of the community.
He got to have a special house all by himself.
He
exactly.
did.
That's a great example of it. And I think people can do this sometimes in the workplace as well, right? You can push the boundaries a little bit. You're not allowed to take your food and eat in the office. And I guarantee you, if somebody does it, it will be a person who thinks they've got power. It would be the boss who dared to snack in the office. It would not be, the cleaner or, an administrative person. Because, when you have power, you start to think, I can be flexible with these rules here. Keep an eye out for that in your group.
I'm also thinking of times of, say, structural change where there might be opportunity to change some of the rules. Like, for instance, in Christchurch, there's been a lot of rebuilding. Businesses have gone from the broken building to the new building. And say a workplace, what happens when they're going, how do we design this new building? Do the other members of the workplace get to have a say on, where the toilet is and, how big the kitchen is,
The collaboration.
The
school I was in got a new staff room. Those plans were there. There was a committee of people who chose to opt into it. And then the plans were put and people got to give feedback and go down and make those choices.
Everybody
I chose the carpet, everybody, and I still love that carpet. And that red colour on the wall. I know you've painted over it, but I liked that red.
So there you go. So everyone gets to be part of, at these key moments, because often when you move into a group or you come into a group, the rules are already decided. But are there opportunities for you to influence the rules?
And that comes down to the belonging, a sense of belonging and camaraderie. Is there a sense of just togetherness and ownership over this? And of course, people who are born into, say, unhealthy groups and cults, they think that they have chosen to buy into this, but actually it was imposed on them.
Yeah, and I like this one here. The system helps members develop a unified group identity that does not erase their own.
That's powerful.
So I'm thinking of...
It doesn't erase your own identity. In a healthy group, your own identity is not erased.
Yes, that's
and it recognises that this group is more powerful than just the one person's identity. We need these new people. And what will we get from this inclusion of this new person? What were the ideas and the thoughts and the creativity? How will that change and improve us?
Yeah, you're looking for growth. And I look at groups and I think about Gloriavale. There were all these people that could have participated, could have offered their ideas. The place would be sitting on more than $60 million of assets if they'd actually let some of the average Joe blogs run with their gifts, their talents, the things they were great at, instead of being smashed and put down
cookie cutter
and put in positions that didn't even suit them, or jobs that weren't even in their skill set, because Gloriavale didn't want other people developing power, rising up within a system unchecked. They couldn't let people develop a great
develop
sense
their own identity
or a sense of self, or that I'm good at something.
Because then they might step out of their box.
The minute your head's popped up, bang, off.
Yes.
And, bang off is about the critical thinking. Those who start to critically think and critically analyse that there's something wrong. So does a healthy group allow critical thinking? Does it allow that analysis? Does it welcome ideas from the outside?
Absolutely, and I think that healthy group knows they don't have it all, even though they do potentially believe in something that they think is more powerful than themselves. Potentially it has a purpose and a meaning that is a big purpose and meaning. They still recognise that there is other knowing.
Yes.
That they need to bring in to grow and to support the purpose of the group.
So there's humility?
Nurturing. That's the word. Does this group nurture a person? Or, as Janja Lalich says, is it a toxic system where the structure crushes, demeans and dehumanises the people trapped in it? Or is it a nurturing group? Look for groups that nurture.
Yeah, and the difference between perfection is the aspiration. Unhealthy groups aim for perfection, expect perfection, and you therefore always fail. Or
and then
does
they punish
and then they punish you. or does it anticipate and hope for growth? That they help to build, and if a person isn't experiencing growth, they don't punish them. They maybe even ask them what's going on and how can we help you to grow, supports them to grow. And then if it still doesn't seem right for this person, for instance, the person who joins the Sweet Adelines who really is tone deaf and really absolutely never had a hope. I don't know how they got in your group. Maybe there was a judgment error there, but they got in and everyone was loving on them it just wasn't changing.
How do you carefully move them on without destroying yourself?
Yeah. And eventually they hopefully come to recognise that.
Would you like to be the secretary? Social media. I think something about that is you're looking at those issues of, are people gaining a sense of pride, positive pride through being in part of this group? Human flourishing. Is there human flourishing?
Yeah, well, that's a tricky one because some of these groups do believe they are promoting a form of human flourishing. Yeah.
Yeah, well, you know what? Not many people know what a cult is, right? We've established that.
Yeah.
But lots of people, when they see someone they love in a toxic group, have a sense. And I often hear people say, I think it's a cult, but no one knows what a cult is, really. They don't have the definition somewhere, but I think what they're saying is, I think this person is an unhealthy group. They're an unhealthy group. And I think people, hopefully, I hope most people have experienced some point in their life a healthy group. So that's how they instinctively recognise an unhealthy group. But it's about putting words to that, right?
Yeah.
So that people can not just go, I think that's a cult, without really understanding what that means. But they actually can say, these are the factors that group
Is my
has.
identity allowed or is it being erased? Am I allowed to ask questions?
Yeah.
Is there checks and balances for power systems?
And they can talk to that person that they love, who they think is in the unhealthy group, and actually
Ask for
vocalise.
some of these words.
Vocalise what those things are. So let's go to what I personally think is the hardest one, and that is signs of a healthy system of influence.
And I'd love to hear about your book club, or maybe your ski club. Are you able to weave some of your examples?
I should have talked about the book club at the point that we were on the Charismatic Authority, because I was the leader. I was the leader of our book club for 10 years, and I used to say to them that I am the benign dictator of this group, because they were all so hopeless at actually managing themselves. Lovely, lovely people, many of my dearest friends. But as soon as I gave up the whole role, the whole thing just fell apart.
Oh, dearie
because they couldn't organise themselves in the way that I knew was best.
Oh, you were a benign dictator. Goodness me. Did you all have to wear the same thing?
So how did you do with this then? Number one, the system of a healthy system.
I tried not to belittle
Did you do
anyone.
this though? Did you help people feel welcome and important to the group as they are? Did you do that?
I believe so. But you can't ask a cult leader if they did a good job with their group.
No, but they think they've done well recruiting people.
Exactly.
And that is their success. Their measure of success, how many people are in the group?
Okay. So I don't think I could be really asked about the success of my book club, given that I was the leader for 10 years.
Did you encourage healthy
10
community,
years.
teamwork, camaraderie, open discussion? Well, in debate. I'm guessing the book club did that.
We did do that, yes.
Yeah. Group goals.
Oh, no, what they did this thing when I was away for a couple of weeks, a couple of months, which was terrible. They introduced a system, and I'm like, they introduced a system where they rated a book out of 13.
13. Oh, that would hurt. Why not 10?
Why not 10? They did it. I know they. At the end of the group, thereafter, they all went around and did a round of what number out of 13 would you give it?
Unbelievable.
And every time I sat there fuming.
I love it. That's hilarious. So what are signs of healthy systems of influence?
Well, the system of influence was not working there, because they should have recognised my anger and they should have spread around the group and got them to stop doing the stupid 13 out of...
Did you recognise your anger? You did? Because that's about self-awareness. Healthy groups encourage a sense of self-awareness. So it's not all about the group and group ideology. It's about individual personal growth.
I realised I had to get over myself.
Oh, that is awesome.
Otherwise they'd come up with something else.
So you challenged the unity of the group, and you were able to? Well, you were the benign dictator.
Yeah.
Okay.
Eventually, someone else took over. Well, actually, they all
think
took over.
one of the interesting lines that Janja's got is that members are not required to dedicate their whole lives to the cause, which comes back to that thing again of like the high demand hand. You know, does the group demand your employment, your time? Does it demand every aspect of your resources? Does it want to control all of your relationships?
Boundary creep.
Yeah, boundary
Are
creep.
you in a group and the boundary creeping? Because you look at a group like Gloriavale, they did not end up, they didn't start how
Yeah,
they've ended up.
Yeah, with a pervasive influence over every area of your life.
Did we actually describe what the system of influence is?
Not really.
No. So that's using the social pressure around us that, like, because we are humans, are tribe people, right?
Yeah, influence. We're socially influencing each other all the time.
We're constantly, all the time. Like if you walk through the mall, you'll see 3 or 4 teenage girls walking towards you wearing all exactly the same thing. And you're like, they are wearing a teenage girl uniform. And like that is influence on display. You know, like we want to be like one another. And with my closest friends, I go and buy something, the first thing they say is, where'd you get that? Why?
Or like,
why do they need to know? Where? I got it.
And it's our cultural identities and things like that too. Like there's a reason why most men we see on the street here aren't wearing lungis or lava-lavas. You know, whereas if we went to some other countries in the world, the majority of the men would be wearing those. So yeah, there's so many aspects to what influences us socially.
Yeah.
But the influence, when it benefits you, when it enriches you,
when it doesn't stop you from being who you are.
When it doesn't stop you from being who you
literally
are.
cannot get away from social influence. It is part of humanity. And it's when the social environment around you is literally used against you. It's used to exploit you and it's used to control you.
Take away your choices.
Yeah, like the whole, I remember reading, was it in the 12 Tribes, about children being publicly beaten in front of other children so that they understood, other children understood their behaviour had to change so they weren't going to be the one up on display.
I remember that in the court with the Gloriavale Employment Court issue. And you had people saying, oh, we don't withhold food from people. It happened a few times. And others who'd left Gloriavale saying it didn't need to happen more than a few times. You know, we learnt our lesson. Don't do that.
Or the Centrepoint hierarchy system, where they got people up and they put them in a big group meeting on a Saturday night or whenever they had the meetings. They'd pull up all the teenagers, put them all in a row. This is the most worst. This is system of influence, very toxic system of influence. And they would say, okay, you know, like here's Joan. Joan is in the middle of the group, and the person would say, well, where should Joan be? And someone pops up and says, I love Joan. She was great. She looked after my kids this week, so she gets moved to the top of the group by 3 or 4 steps. And then someone else in the group, Tim, says, oh no, I can't stand Joan. She
That's terrible.
You know, she didn't do whatever she should have done. And unfortunately, the social influence there was rewarding compliance to the leadership, and it was rewarding sexual promiscuity. So those teenagers all knew that if they had sex with whoever wanted to have sex with them, they would move up to the top of the group and they wouldn't have to endure being the publicly humiliated at the bottom of the group one. So that was extraordinarily toxic.
Terrible.
So that's how systems of influence and a desire to be socially accepted and belonging to your group and feeling safe are used against you.
So a healthy community could be a church that actually does have a formal membership, but you don't see any distinction between the people that are adherents who are coming along regularly, who look like part of the fellowship, but they're not actually a signed up member. You shouldn't see, one group isn't treated differently and badly from another, and a visiting person who comes in, that they would have no
So there's not
no
this
idea.
sort of elitism or very strong boundaries of...
You can still have inner groups and circles, but you shouldn't be able to see that.
Like
a
for instance,
strong
like
difference of how people are treated.
what about the tithing that you can get, whether that's public or private? You know, and in some groups I think maybe they talk about the money that certain people have given. Yeah, that would be a way to use social influence. Like this person was just given $1,000 to this cause, and they're given a whole lot of status
Under pressure.
and then everyone else feels somehow
Pressured that they need to.
Yeah, exactly. So the healthy groups, everyone feels welcome and important to the group as they are. and the group encourages community, teamwork and camaraderie. Oh, I've got a good example. So the medical centre I go to, at least a shout out to St Martin's Medical Centre. I have been practiced in many different GP practices over the years, and I believe that this is the healthiest practice I've ever worked in.
Oh, nice.
So I finally landed, and what they've got this great thing that's working right now of this what's called 5K to Thrive to 5K, 5K to Thrive, where they're taking people in the community in the practice out for a run each week. And so what they're doing is they're all getting together, and there's like 60 members of the community all going out for a walk/run with the general
GP.
practice team, and it's just so cute. And I kind of actually feel somehow, because the night they do it is not a good night for me, and I can actually see them all doing it across the park from where I live, and they've all got these yellow hats on, and they're all kind of like doing this lovely thing with the practice patients, and I actually feel kind of like I'm missing out. It's FOMO. That's what it is. It's FOMO. I feel FOMO that I'm not part of this really healthy, engaging, developing...
Rather than feeling guilty because someone else is going to report on you for not being there.
Shout out to St Martin's Medical.
Yeah, actually that's one of them too, not being spied on. Going to a group where you don't feel like people are spying on you and reporting your
I haven't been
behaviours.
getting emails each week to tell me, why aren't you there, Caroline?
Sounds healthy.
Yeah. So the group encourages self-awareness and personal responsibility, but does not require public self-exposure. The whole confession thing, that's that toxic version of it, is where you get to grow and you get to do your own work and you don't have to display it.
And you don't have to dedicate your whole life for the cause of that group. That's not to say that you don't have a dedication to a belief system that does transform your mind, heart, and the way you spend your time. So we're talking about the actual group here. It is good to have belief systems that actually transform you from the inside out. That is a good thing, human growth and developing. Why not? But is the group.
And the group's not saying that they've got the answer to everything. So they help you to feel like you belong. They set realistic levels of commitment. You don't have to transform yourself into something else or dedicate your life completely. You're allowed to have other aspects to your life. Yeah. So, wow.
Basically, what Janja Lalich has done by creating the 4 unhealthy group sets of characteristics, we've looked at the flip side of them. What are the healthy characteristics?
Which
And
she's also provided.
she's provided them.
Let's give us credit where credit's due.
The idea is, if you're looking for a group to join, look for those that are healthy. If you see red flags of the unhealthy ones, run a mile, put your walking shoes on now, because these are groups that entrap and enslave, whereas healthy groups encourage, flourish and nourish. That's a good
Did
one.
you just come up with that?
I came up with that. Encourage,
flourish
and nourish.
Bit of a tongue twister.
Wow.
Bit of a tongue twister.
You heard it here first.
tongue twister. Yeah, lovely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, but it's an open, ongoing conversation, isn't it? There isn't there isn't a 10-step checklist for checking a healthy group, but keep educating yourself. Keep growing in your awareness of what are the green flags and what are the red flags. Keep cult-proofing your life.
Yeah. And when you are going into a group, just ask questions. Don't just believe what you see. Actually, keep on critically examining it and keep on asking yourself and keep until you've got good reason to trust.
Google.
Yeah.
Read articles, watch documentaries. We are in a world of social media. People have opinions and splatter them out everywhere. And if you're seeing a whole lot of information about one group regularly appearing, there's probably, all likelihood, something wrong. It's not just that group being persecuted. It's not just a group of bitter people trying to get revenge. People don't actually live their lives like that. Cults like to tell people that that's how the outside world live their lives. It's actually not true.
Yeah, equally though, if you can't find anything on the group, it doesn't necessarily mean they're not harmful.
No.
Yeah.
And, that's the other thing. And don't be scared to join groups. Because some people coming out of unhealthy groups can have a reticence to join a group that has any boundaries at all. Because it awakens in them some of the trauma of spiritual abuse. So by isolating yourself, again, it's the healthy groups can help transform the
Yeah.
trauma from being in an unhealthy group.
Yeah, that's right.
We're social creatures. We need wonderful groups. So, okay, thank you for listening. Thank you for joining us today, friends. We hope you've learnt some more tips and tricks to help you to cult-proof your life.
And go and join a choir and a book club. Get moving, get running, get active, because, like Bessel said,
Bessel van der Kolk.
the doctor in the trauma conference, he said that we need to be working through any traumatic memories we have using the body. So get active.
Yeah, so we hope that there's been something today that has helped you to cult-proof your life. Keep listening to Cult Chat on the Plains FM website, live on the radio, through Apple Podcasts, through Spotify, on the YouTube station that we've got. I would hope you to go to one of our sites and share with your friends, tell people about it, and come back next time for our next episode. So thank you very much for having us,
Ka
and
kite.
we'll see you later.
Thanks, everyone.
If anything in today's episode was difficult or upsetting for you and you would like to talk to somebody, we encourage our New Zealand listeners to free call or text 1737 for support from a trained counsellor. Or you might like to visit the resources section of the Olive Leaf Network website, where you can find a range of organisations and resources that might be able to support you. We would also like to remind you that the views and thoughts and opinions that have been expressed in this program are the speakers alone, and Cult Chat does not necessarily endorse or share them.